Hey everyone, welcome back to Hero Wars Guide. Today I want to talk about something that I came across in the Asgard Minion Phase loot that was a surprise to me, and so I just wanted to share it with you all. But the rewards given for defeating the minions don't match up with some of my expectations, and after discussing on Discord and a few different groups, I think it's pretty commonly the case that people have a misunderstanding about what you actually get from the minion phase. So what I have right here on the screen is within the Asgard screens, the level selector. I chose level 130 here as an example, and it's telling me that from the minion battle rewards, there's a certain set of rewards, including 65 greater insignia at random here for the minions, and then amounts for the boss, and then down below some amounts for the individual rewards. And the boss and the individual damage is all lining up as you would expect, but I started to notice that as I was defeating the minion nodes, that the results, the actual loot given, didn't match up with what was shown on the screen of possible loot before. And that wording, I suppose, is a hint, but I thought it was just, it's possible because if you lose the fight, you don't get anything, but if you win, you get it all. But after taking a closer look, I found that was not the case. The rewards from fighting any individual minion node are going to be less than what is advertised here in most cases. And in some cases, it can be drastically less than what the preview screen tells you that you might get. So I want to talk through what that means and what it means for different levels, because it's not the same depending on what level that your guild has selected for the minion phase. At first I thought this might be a bug, but I reached out to support about a month ago, and they replied to a video that I'd sent them to just kind of capture the detail of the issue. They let me know that this is not a bug. This is an intended feature that the loot that they show you for any particular minion node, I've got an example here on the screen, is what they're calling possible, but the actual amount that you're given is randomized depending on the difficulty that you've set. And the harder the difficulty, the higher the chance of you getting the actual listed rewards. So it hits people at lower raid levels a little bit harder. I'm a little mixed on how to feel about all this. As someone who's spent a fair number of emeralds at the Astral Seer, in a way I'm effectively buying more days worth of resources than I thought, because everyone's getting a little bit less out of the raid. But, on the other hand, I had assumed that I was getting a certain amount of resources out of the minion phase, and that turns out to be, I'm not actually getting what I thought I was. But in any case, in my typical fashion, I did a little bit of work around looking at the numbers behind the scenes here, and I wanted to share that out with all of you, so you might make the most possible educated decision about how to set the raid level for your guild moving forward. So a lot of you may have been working on some sheet like this that breaks down the rewards at each level of the raid. In this case, these columns here are showing the amount from the minion phase and the amount from the boss. So maybe you had something similar to try to decide where's the right spot for how hard it's going to be for your guild versus the rewards you get. But these numbers, again, match the screens that we were just looking at Hero Wars within the game, and they're not quite right. So what I've listed here is the actual percentages that you're going to get from each type of node based on the raid level that's set by your guild. I've got here the level and the type of battle that you're doing, and then the different reward types listed across the top. So you can see that the percentages are much lower for the easier level in the raid. Crystal's always 100. You're always getting the 100% of the listed amount for crystal, but everything else is on a scale, and if you're at the very low levels, you might only be getting 5 or 10 or 20% of the possible amount that the game's going to show you. So if it says you're going to get up to 20 insignia, on average you're only going to get 1 if you're from a mini boss fight on the 85 level raid. So the difference is very, very large, especially at these lower levels. And then working all the way up to 150, you do get 100% of the listed amount. So if your guild is fighting 150, then this is not big news to you, because you're kind of getting the same thing. The only thing really to learn from this is that maybe your weaker competing guilds are not. And they do have in the data, there is information in place for the level 160 minions, even though I don't think that's accessible. And I wanted to give a thank you to Richard W., who pointed me in the right direction for how to get at this information. I was capturing the information manually over the course of several weeks, and that was kind of a painstaking process, so this saved me a lot of time. Okay, so just wanted to use this sheet to illustrate the point that the higher the level you're facing, the greater percentage of the possible loot shown on screen. So like the number of possible loot goes up drastically at the higher levels, but also the chances of your actual getting that loot is much higher at the higher levels. So I feel a little bit bad about this, because I've recommended to people that they should be choosing the minion level where most of their guild is winning most of the fights. And I guess that's probably still pretty good guidance for how to select your difficulty levels, but this is leading me to believe that if you're kind of on the edge between two different levels, you might want to go ahead and try the harder one, just because the percentages here are going to be a good chunk higher at each one of these steps that you go up. Lastly here, I've summarized this down to just one row per level. It's a little bit easier to look at. So what we've got here, each one of those levels that I mentioned, this section of the grid is the possible numbers. This will match if you open up the game, go to that level selector screen. This is what it tells you that you might get for each level, but this is the actual expected amounts based on those percentages. So you get a 5% chance at this level 85 raid for getting each of the possible 40 insignia. So 5%, you should only expect to actually get 2. So much lower return than you might have thought if you were just looking at that difficulty screen. Looks like, hey, up to possible 40, you might think I thought you'd get 40. Maybe you were thinking you'd get at least 20 or 30, but in reality it's way, way, way lower. So I'm going to share this. I'm going to make this available in a Google Sheet, so any of you guys can pop this open and take a look at the numbers and export it anywhere else that you'd like to look at them. But this section here, that tells you the actual expected numbers by level, and you can see in some of the more important resource types like the greater and the radiant, you really do have a very large step up between levels. Like here, it didn't look quite as big as you go up each level in the greater and the radiant, but if you look at the actual expectations of what you'll take home, then the difference between each one of these harder levels is quite a bit larger. And then here is just the total expected percentage. So how does the possible relate to the expected across all of the different nodes that you encounter? And as I mentioned, 150 is getting the full amount, but then it goes down each level below. Okay, so you might all want to take that into consideration as you're setting a raid level for your guild in the coming weeks here, that these are the amounts that you really should be using to have expectations for what you're going to take out of the raid phase. All right, I hope you guys found this helpful. If so, and you think there might be people in your guild who have some misconceptions about the amount of loot that they're getting out of the minion phase, please think about sharing this video with them as well. Thanks.